Are you ready for pain? Are you ready for suffering? If the answer is yes, then you're ready.
Hi, Benji here, and I'm going to explain what the white gaze is and the purpose of POC-centered spaces. Tambo and Bones, a play starting a 29-date run in London, has asked white people to not attend its July 5th performance. The play is an exploration of race and black culture, and its directors are trying to create a night where black people can experience the play away from the white gaze. White gaze is the perspective that sees whiteness as the norm, and it's the dominant one in Western society. It's often held by white people, but also informs how we all think and feel about ourselves and the world. Because our society is informed by white supremacy, which positions people of colour as being different and lesser than the favourable white norm. This results in a scrutiny placed upon POC that's almost impossible to escape from. The ways in which we express ourselves, including through art, are often critiqued and assigned value through a white lens, even if white people aren't the primary focus. So POC-centred spaces, like the one this play is trying to create, seek to address this fact by creating environments where POC can exist and express themselves, in a space that's more free from judgment and scrutiny directed towards them than most. The purpose isn't to sow division, but to meet a reasonable need and correct an unfair imbalance. Hope that helps. Bye.
This is a continuation from the conversation about the white gaze. To continue, according to web search results, the term the white gaze is a concept that refers to the assumption that the default reader or observer is coming from a perspective of someone who identifies as white, or that people of color sometimes feel the need to take into account the white reader or the observer's reaction. The term was popularized by critically acclaimed writer Toni Morrison, who said that it's this idea that Black lives have no meaning and no depth without the white gaze. The white gaze can affect how writers craft stories, how employees behave in workplaces, and how people of color perceive themselves and their cultures. In my blog that I'll be releasing pretty soon, in an increasingly interconnected world, understanding and celebrating these different cultures and perspectives and narratives is essential. However, many marginalized voices struggle to be heard due to various forms of oppression, including the pervasive influence of the white gaze. The white gaze is a multifaceted issue. It refers to the way these stories are filtered and narratives are framed. So, how do we fix this? We promote authenticity in diverse narratives. This involves navigating cultural sensitivities and understanding the nuances within marginalized communities. It is important right now that we strike the balance between being authentic and respectful. And this can be challenging, especially for creators who are not familiar with communities they're portraying. But we also have to avoid any stereotypes and misrepresentation. In the pursuit of authenticity, which is so prevalent today, there's a risk that inadvertently reinforcing stereotypes or misrepresenting marginalized communities. It's essential to approach storytelling, while we're doing so, even sharing on social media, with a form of sensitivity and awareness to make sure that we're respectful and accurate in our representation. Thanks for listening.
So I'm struggling to articulate this, but I just got back from a month-long trip to Uganda. I'm Ugandan, and I go every once in a while. I haven't been for a while because of COVID, but I went for about a month, and it was so healing for me, and I haven't really been able to process why it was healing for me until now. And I recognized that it was because I was away from the white gaze for so long. We talk a lot about the male gaze and how it is so unhealthy for women and how it's so toxic, but we don't talk about the white gaze a lot and how it affects the black experience and black people in their daily lives. Uganda is a majority dark-skinned country. Everyone there is darker than a paper bag. Most of the people, not everyone, but most people. Being surrounded by that every day, it just reminded me that there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with the way I look, with how my hair is. I'm beautiful. Yes, white supremacy has still reached Uganda due to skin whitening and things like that, but it not being a pressing issue at all times, it just wasn't a thought in my mind.
You know what frustrates me? Us as people of color are constantly surveilled by white people, right? Yes, we are. But what frustrates me the most is even when white people are not in the picture, even when we are, we are just not around white people, we surveil ourselves under this white gaze that we create. Like, because when they're not there, the white gaze doesn't exist. We could just be joyful and brown. But yet somehow, a lot of people of color still have white people on their tongues. Like, still talk about white people all the fucking time. Like, sometimes we could just be okay and just be joyful and just, like, live our lives without including the white gaze. Like, we really, like, we can't. It's such a Toni Morrison idea of thinking. But honestly, she's so right. Like even when white people aren't around, we literally create their existence for us because we're so used to the white gaze being around that we just have to include them in everything unconsciously. It's like the third consciousness. Like we have, our consciousness, then we have our consciousness that's people of color, and then we have a consciousness that we literally chisel and mold and drape around our minds that does not exist. This white consciousness that doesn't exist that we create for ourselves. Like some people of color, it's really no shade, but they talk about white people so fucking much to the point where it's just like, you know what I mean? Like, I just want us to liberate ourselves. I really do. Like, we could just be free. Like, I just want us to liberate ourselves from the white gaze, from both the white gaze and the white gaze, because they just taking up too much space in your mind. They really are. Just be joyful and brown, please.
Hi, I'm Hannah, and I'm a Johnny-come-lately to understanding that I'm autistic. So growing up, I did not know that I knew I was weird. I knew I was different. I didn't know I was autistic. And so in trying to integrate myself into social groups, I would certainly mask. But definitely part of my masking is that, of course, it's all still me. But so often I would be, consuming media like John Green books or watching different televisions. I was very much quirky girl, right? So I definitely found myself in that sort of manic pixie dream girl thing, except that I was definitely a manic pixie nightmare. I was not the today my name is Autumn Rain type of bitch, but I was definitely let's really enjoy this moment right here and look at the sky type of bitch. Always have been. That is just me. But for so often, especially through my teen years, it was like manic pixie dream girl written by a dude, and I would be trying to comply my behavior to fit specifically the men I was trying to please. I think it's pretty normal that your teen years are a period of figuring out who you are and trying to fit in. And my thing that I only notice in the hindsight is that in trying to fit in, even though there were parts of me that were definitely my rebellious self, even my rebellious self was catered to the male gaze. So much about who I was masking as and trying to be was catered to the male gaze. And even though I wasn't the wear makeup, do her hair, wear the cute outfit all the time, I was definitely a t-shirt and jeans, but I wanted to be who I was, slanted for the male gaze, because so much of my upbringing was, everything about you needs to fit towards the male gaze. Everything about you needs to be fit for male comfort. Be you, but not too much, because you don't want to make the men uncomfortable, and you certainly never want to be causing men to stumble. Something I take joy in as an adult is letting my hair be natural, not wearing makeup. Sometimes I'm still insecure, sure, but I am no longer catering everything about me, and especially not my appearance, for the male gaze. I dress and express myself for the joy that I get in being myself. And I think often I'll be like, that's a small thing, until I look back and realize how much of my personhood was trying to cater to the pleasing of specifically men, and the joy that I get now in not fucking doing that.
So I thought Barbarian was very well shot and very well executed for what it is. But one of the things that I love about Night of the Living Dead that sets it apart from so many other horror films with black protagonists and white directors is that because Dwan Jones was given such a hand in the production process and the rework of the character, Ben resists the white gaze in a way that a lot of other black protagonists in horror don't. The white gaze is what Toni Morrison refers to as treating your default audience member as a white person, and one of the byproducts of that is that non-white characters are usually introduced as a means to an end for a white person, or to service their character development, and what that often translates to in horror film is a lot of sacrificial lambs and martyrs. You have a lot of non-white characters who bend over backwards and sacrifice themselves, risk themselves for white characters who would probably leave them behind. Like, one of the best and funniest things about Ben in Night of the Living Dead to me is that, like, he really does his best to save those white people from themselves. But when they don't listen, they don't listen. And then it's no longer his problem. That feels like an authentic representation of a black person in like a horror scenario to me. Most black people I know are not overly invested in being white people's Superman. Like, one of the things that differentiates black horror protagonists from black protagonists in white horror to me is that because black horror is written from a black perspective, it comes with the understanding and the knowledge that, like, being a black person in this country means that you have to walk around with a higher level of awareness, and thus you respond differently to scenarios that raise red flags than white people do. Like, one of the biggest things that Get Out got praised for is that Chris felt like an actual, like, intelligent horror film protagonist. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Chris moves through that situation the way black men in America have to move through every situation, with a higher level of awareness for the threats that surround them. All of this is like a very long, verbose, jargon-heavy way of saying watching Georgina Campbell go back for those white men against all reason made me mad. Like, I get and I appreciate what the movie's big point is, which is that, like, Justin Long's character and Frank are way more of a monster than the mother, like, the big barbarian creature living under the house ever was. I don't, it's kind of funny to me that in a story about how horrendous and evil men are, a feminine figure still ended up being the villain. Like, I don't know, maybe that's a weird critique to have. But honestly, outside of the, like, cinematography, which was excellent, I watched that movie the same way I watch most, like, cheesy slashers. I was just like, why would you do that?